Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you are doing well and you are ready for today's show because, well, it's the last Friday of the month, and it being February makes it, a bit... and by the way, is this year a leap year? I believe February 29th exists. It does. So check that out. But even with the extra day, we're still having an early Nathan episode, but that's okay because we have a lot of fun stuff to talk about. And one of them is very relevant to AI in general, which if you haven't been paying attention, there's a new little hubbub with how AI is kind of treating some of the prompts that it gives. And I think it's a good way to bring up a conversation that I always enjoy having, which is just new technology. And, they never got it right, and something that we have been advocating for AI from the beginning, which is simply that these systems are only as good as the data that you put in. And if you put in crap data, you're going to get crap output. And that's going to play in heavily with it. There may be some light politics, but we promise we're going to keep that to a minimum. But overall, this is a conversation that, way long ago when I kind of joined Computer America and we were having these conversations, Craig, of course, had the strict policy, no politics, and I try to keep politics to a minimum as much as I can. It was easier back then to talk about what the latest printer was, how good the latest, scanner was, if you needed to do, what router you needed, that kind of thing. It's like technology had a very work, home office kind of inclination, and then you could branch out into video games or cell phones, mobile devices, that kind of thing. Technology has gotten to a point in the past 10 years, and I think Nathan can speak to this as well because he's passionate about these topics, that, it's not just those segments that are kind of siloed together. Now technology is everywhere. Thanks to social media. Social media companies became tech companies, became data companies, and now everyone is run by their data. It's really hard to kind of navigate that minefield, but Nathan is going to do his best. I'm going to do my best, and any complaints, comments, or concerns, Ben at computeramerica.com. Feel free to send them in, and I will read them and discard them as needed. So with that being said, let's go ahead and bring on our guest, and he is managing editor over at Popzara.com. And if you haven't heard of Popzara, where have you been? He does a lot over there with his consortium of writers and do everything from game reviews to movie, book. They do a little bit of pop culture. They do tech reviews, so of course there's some overlap there. And overall, I've met a number of his cohorts, and they're all great. And you know what? Nathan's great for putting them all together, and he's great in his own right. So Nathan, welcome back onto the program. How you been?
Hey, Ben. Hey, everybody. Real quick, I just want to apologize that if you hear like periodic brief silences when I should be chuckling and laughing, that's me pushing the mute button because I'm getting over a nasty cold. So I apologize for any smoke or cough and laugh.
I'm glad that you are able to muddle through this and join us on the show because I do enjoy these. And yeah, we have a lot to kind of go over. You have hit some of the topics that we haven't talked about. I'm looking like the VIZIO one, for example, didn't even catch my radar. But yeah, we have some very fun and interesting articles. So before we get into that, if people go over to Popzara, they may notice there is a lot of stuff going on. Why don't you go ahead and give a quick introduction of what your goal is over at Popzara?
My goal, well, first round of funding, 17 trillion.
Good.
I need
good.
AI. I'm going to replace all my editors with AI bots and work them to death.
Isn't it crazy? You joke about $17 trillion. That's like 5 apples. That's 5 apples. That's crazy.
Aren't they asking for that? Like, I forget the cohorts who do AI are asking for the absurd amount of money that's like quintuple what the entire American GDP is. It's crazy. Yeah, and they'll get it too. Like as soon as Nvidia becomes the most profitable company in the world, which shockingly may happen.
Yeah.
Like that's so weird to me that's Nvidia. You know what? I'm holding on to my AMD card close right now. But no, I Popzara. It's a Bazaar of pop culture. It's a little bit of this. It's like you said, it's a little bit of entertainment. No politics if we can help it. By choice, by the way, it's a very conscious choice. It's a little respite. And we do pretty good stuff, and I want to thank all my editors who do the good stuff and make it sing. So,
yep, absolutely. And by the way, I was just checking out your game reviews. You do have some new ones up. I have been completely engrossed in another game. And
Power World?
No, Nathan, I put in my 200 hours. I'm good on Power World.
Are you like everybody else, where it's dropping like a rock?
No. I played it all the way through, caught everything, beat all the gyms, and I was done with it. Like, I don't have the urge to replay it, but I thoroughly enjoyed my first playthrough. So, yeah.
Only 200 hours. That's like a college course. That's like several college courses. You could have graduated.
I have been taking college courses on the side, so yeah, it's been a stress. But the game that I would recommend for Corey to check out, and I'm only like 40 hours into it, but would recommend it, is Deep Rock Galactic Survivors. So that's a very fun, quick pick up, put down game. That's
a phenomenon. Like that's part of the Deep Rock thing. It's I've yet to join that universe, but it's one of those things where it's more popular than
it's so
the
popular
news media would have you
and the fans
believe.
are so dedicated, like they enjoy their little fan base, and for good reason. You know, they're very creative, they're very dedicated. So
well, you know, I don't really want to get into it. I didn't send this story to you, so I'll just briefly touch on it because I don't think it's a story. We saw 2 stories this year about how Nintendo's new Switch may be delayed till next year. Whoop-de-doo. I was wrong about that. I thought it would come out this year. I probably am not going to be right. So yeah, people, I can be wrong. So send your hate mail to Ben. Then there's a rumor that Sony will be releasing a PlayStation 5 Pro, which I hope to God they won't, because that would be the worst thing they've ever done. It's because of games like what you just described, Power World, Galactic Rock. The games driving the industry are not these $2 billion blockbuster graphic intensive pushing things. A PlayStation 5 Pro would not help Sony's coffers in any way, shape, or form. In fact, it would probably be detrimental to them.
Yeah.
Because that's just not the things people are playing. It's like that's just not it's not driving the industry.
And also it's just another way to say, oh, all of your other PlayStations are obsolete. Like it's another way to just kind of say that your current player base is just not good enough, or console base is just not good enough.
Well, you're looking at a recession right now in game development where tons and tons of people are losing their jobs because it's an overcorrection, because they've overhired, they overanticipated. I'm sympathetic to anybody who lost their job during this downturn. I really am, especially since the gaming industry is making all the money. The problem is it's not making all the money based on high investment. It's like Hollywood, like Steven Spielberg predicted this. You simply can't have an industry of $300 million movies. You can't do it. It will kill it. It will kill it.
Yeah.
It's just too high risk. And so you can't look at winning on the craps table as a strategy. It's called luck.
Bet it all on black. It'll probably work. 50-50 chance it'll work.
Look,
so
Wesley Snipes told me that 30 years ago, and I've never gone away from his advice. Always bet on black. No, but I'll say this. Enjoy the games you enjoy. No matter what you have, there's something to enjoy on it, and you don't need high tech hardware to enjoy them.
Yep. So 2024 is shaping up to be a repeat of 2023, which is just an amazing year for games. So that's still there's fun games out there, but either way, we're not focusing on that, at least not yet.
Exactly.
We have other stories to cover, and I think, Nathan, we're going to start off today's show with AT&T. be a pretty quick story because, as many of you know, yesterday there was at 4 a.m. a massive outage by about noon. But between 4 a.m. and noon, you had just a deluge of people who could not, get work done on their phone. They could not receive text. They could not receive calls there. And it really highlighted, which is why I assume you included it in the show here. It really highlighted that, we are dependent on these little mobile phones, and the networks behind them are essentially public utilities at this, or like as essential. I'm sorry, they are essential utilities. And
Well, here's the thing, though. I actually look at it a different way. I'm actually going to tie this story into something else from a very opposite angle.
Sure.
But here's the thing. Though. Depending on the type of phone service you have, I actually think this outage was played for laughs by a lot in the tech world because they kept talking about how it's just like that new Netflix movie, where everyone loses cell phone service and they start going gaga goo goo crazy. But no, it's the fact of the matter is that, like, if you had an iPhone, for example, I can't speak to Android phone, but if you have an iPhone, you probably didn't really notice a lot of interruptions because most of your data comes from
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi. And iMessage is not a SMS service; it's a data service. Like, I've actually had editors, AT&T, I had no problems because they're so connected off the grid. I mean, not off the grid, but they're not dependent on cell phone towers. They're so dependent on siphoning free yummy Wi-Fi that they didn't probably notice the free fall so much. I think
both Apple and Google have set up situations where you could connect. Essentially, anytime you walk by a Wi-Fi network that had the right hardware or was part of like the Spectrum service or part of some kind of service, it would automatically connect and give you data if you were walking by that Wi-Fi signal. So they've been trying to move people off of towers, but also towers still play an important role. Like if you're on the go, you're going to be using a tower.
Yeah, I assume this would probably disproportionately affect people like in the gig economy, like people who are completely reliant on towers, on cell phone towers. But the reason I really want to talk about it is because it really makes you think how much our central services are dependent not on this broad, infrastructure, but they're dependent on like a laptop or a computer. Like AT&T is blaming like a server issue. Like, they're not saying that this was a hack. They're basically saying like one entry point went down and therefore the whole network went down. And you see this a lot with like data breaches. Like, you see this a lot with data breaches. Oh, somebody left a laptop in a coffee shop and next thing you know, all your data is stolen. Like, you don't have to hack if your infrastructure is stupid. All you got to do is just push. It's like, those doors in New York where they have like, instead of 50 bolts, it's just like the chain.
Yes.
It's like, if you want to get in, you just have to push harder. Like, that's what this is like a little bit. It's like, it's pretty remarkable that we're so dependent on cell phone services. We're so dependent on this infrastructure that's kind of crappy. And it makes you wonder how tenuous our relationship. You say it's a utility, which I don't disagree. But if it was a utility, people poo-poo government intervention. Like, even I poo-poo net neutrality. You know this. But at the same time, though, sometimes lots and lots of government waste acts as like a deterrent. Because there's so much slop on there. There's so much redundancy that you almost never hear about like the water going down or the grid going down.
And trust me, we have had people on the show that specialize in hardening utilities, essentially, for electricity grids, for public water, filtration, water, that kind of thing. It happens all the time. Like, there's a real effort to push that, but human error, and going by the article that you linked from NBC, saying that the most likely outage was a cloud misconfiguration, which, as their commenter said, is a fancy word for human error, which could be route everything to this IP address, and they put a 9 instead of a 0, and then of course it would bounce back and everything just crashed. Like, most networks, Nathan, are set up with toothpicks and tape and bubble gum. That's just the world we live in.
And I hate to say this because it's going to sound like I'm a conspiracy theorist, but let me put on my tinfoil hat for a second. Like, if you've ever dealt with contractors, which I know you have, right?
Yes.
You do bidding. You go like, okay, I want to get, and you say to yourself, well, I'm saving so much money. but the trade-off is there's a reason why that bit's so cheap. There's a reason why. Like there's a reason why when a bill collector calls you, like English is not their third language, right? There's a reason why these things are cheap. It's because they are not investing in effluence. They are not investing in superfluous. They are investing in threadbare, like you said, toothpicks and tape. Like how can we do this on the cheap?
Right.
How can we get this running at cost or less than cost? And yep. I'll tell you this might shock you, Ben. This might shock you. I'm all for government excess, because if they're going to waste money, if they're going to gobble it, if they're going to have 50 million civil servants working on something, that's probably enough to overcome the malfeasance of just recklessness. Yeah. Like if you have so much human excess, then I think that reduces the amount of just shutdown error. I
think it's safe to say that whatever caused this, even if it was human error, whether it was AT&T cutting corners, whether it was whatever it may be, they're going to get to the bottom of it, because, we have kind of privatized our phone networks, which, ever since Bell and Bell South and all that, crap in the 90s and 80s, there was a situation where, in California, they had the wildfires, which were awful, and a lot of people lost their homes. But first responders couldn't talk to other first responders because the phone lines were so clogged. And I think it was I think it was not AT&T. It might have been Verizon or something like that. Actually, stopped service.
That happened in the 2000s. That actually happened with Katrina.
Yeah,
there's a very famous story. There was a famous story where President Bush was flying over Katrina. There's a photograph of him, and they had to give him a special satellite phone because the cell phone services were knocked out. They had to. It was crazy. This was 2005.
Whatever kind of horrible tragedy that happens, they usually get to the bottom of it and they fix it. So, it may be the Dutch boy with the dike and, the water spurting out and sticks his finger in it and he's good. And there may be tons of spurts, but, we're always going to find out where to put our finger eventually.
Well, let's just say this, though. I kind of mocked it a little bit, but outage didn't last very long. This was not a month-long outage. This was hours. Let's just be honest here. I've had my electricity out longer because, a bird flew into a power line. And the media likes to take it. They like to jump on it. They like to exaggerate it. They like to say, "Woe is me." But I want to remind everybody, we were talking about this outage on the internet. There was no major outage. People were not in the dark. We weren't putting smoke signals up.
And hopefully no one legitimately got hurt from this. I know that, having constant access to 911 service is
that was the tough one,
kind of like a given in today's modern age. We're okay, we just had our most recent moon landing, great stuff. We can call 911, right? And that's the part that we're still kind of working on. I did find the statement from San Francisco 911 Center saying that if you're an AT&T customer and cannot get through, please try calling from a landline. If that's not an option, then please try to get a hold of a friend who has a different carrier. And which, not going to say that in my personal life this is always the right way, but I have one carrier and, my wife has a different one. So, hey, maybe some redundancy there is always worth it. Yeah.
You're a mixed marriage, you're a modern couple.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, though, the whole landline thing is funny because landlines, people younger people poo-poo them, but they basically are a lifeline for older people, especially people who have home security or lifeline, medical devices and everything. That's literally
who runs most of the landlines. That I keep wanting to say Yahoo in my head. It probably is AT&T. They're trying to phase them out as hard as they can. They're trying to get them to cut their service, stop servicing those customers as hard as they can.
What's funny? When I bought my house a couple years ago, I bought it in a rehab neighborhood that was, let's just say, at one point less than optimal. The kind souls had lovingly stripped every piece of copper from my house. So there was no possibility of having landlines in my house, even if I wanted, because they were gone.
Wi-Fi ready. Great to hear. In that house. Okay, so there's that story, and again, that one's pretty short because, like you said, it's fixed. We're done, and hopefully we get to the bottom of it. We get an update. A lot of people
didn't even know it, though. That's the thing. That's the thing. It's it was presented as some Y2K quality disaster, but I have people with AT&T, they didn't even know there was an outage.
I think, yeah, and the switch to Wi-Fi. There's so many reasons that Wi-Fi is the default for all these phones. More throughput, less cost. It's more reliable.
Better quality too.
Better quality. Like there's a lot of reasons for it. But for those who were affected, and it probably was in the hundreds of thousands because they've had tens of thousands of reports. So, but yeah, it's over with, and hopefully everything's good. So there's that first story. Second story, we're going to go ahead and jump into Google Pay app is shutting down in the US later this year, which, I think Apple, and of course I've talked about Apple because Apple and Google, Apple is switching, they're breaking their contract with Goldman Sachs, I think it was. I
heard that.
Yeah, and I'm sure someone else is going to pick up the Apple card. Though? Mm-hmm.
You know what's funny? I love my Apple wallet. I actually have an Apple savings account.
Yeah, and
they've been amazing. Like it started off at like 4.15. Now I'm up to like 4.3. They keep increasing the interest rates.
Yeah,
like that doesn't. It doesn't feel like they're shutting it. It doesn't feel like there's a problem.
Well, they're probably going to switch gears, but also Apple's worth like 2 or 3 of these banks, so they're going to find someone else. But anyways, Google is killing the Google Pay app, which is right here, later this year. And I mean, and we're going to tie this into another story. But did they say why they're doing this? Because the NFC,
it's redundant.
You think?
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though. I use Google Pay quite a bit. I actually like the Google service because, and I'll tell you why. Like, there's so many pay services out there: PayPal, Venmo, Zelle. Don't use Cash App unless you're a drug dealer. And if anybody asks you to use Cash App, run. But no, Google Pay was always just the easiest to use because there was less hassle when you attach multiple credit cards to it. Mm-hmm. It was easy. It was like, I'll give credit. But they've shut it. They've shut versions of it down. They've rebranded it. I think the version they have now that runs on my phone is the same version they use in India. It's like a P2P like skin. Mm-hmm. The problem is, and I don't know the mechanics of it, Ben. I can't comment to it. But apparently, Google thinks that the Google Wallet app performs most of the functions of it, so they don't need a standalone app. And so Google Wallet, of course, and again, tinfoil hat. Functions like a super app, like you said, like the WeChat in China. Yeah, it takes all your information. So I imagine Google is consolidating their data mining into one app as opposed to like separating it. Which, by the way, used to be the thing years ago. Like everybody who had a suite would separate the suite into like multiple apps, like Office and Apple apps and all this stuff. And now we seem to be kind of going backwards a little bit. So, but the Google Pay app that some people use will stay alive, I think, in India and other places. I think it's because of just the way, like you said, cell phone structures and peer-to-peer over there is a little different. Like cell services work a little different over there.
Yeah,
so that's probably why.
India is a bit of a strange place for like Facebook and Google because they've made huge investments, like billions of dollars of investments to build up the infrastructure to get a billion new users. But of course, it's a billion new users that have never used, wireless or electronic devices or things like that before, or strictly use cell phones that are pretty low tech as they are. So Google Pay is being replaced by Google Wallet. So it's not like you're high and dry.
I think it already has. Yeah. I think it already has. Like I think they're sunsetting Google Pay. Like I think most people have already switched. I haven't. I guess I have to now. But there you go. Thank you, Google. But yeah, I don't think I think this might be one of like the legitimate Google shutdowns that people aren't really going to complain too much about.
Right. And I want to tie this into a little bit from a change that I've experienced in my, in my life, because we have the Google Assistant, and I was trying to use it as an alarm clock the other day to play a certain song on Spotify. I think it was like Lime in the Coconut, if you really need to know, which is a great wake up song. So because you always wake up with a headache, so you get like, how do I fix this? And you listen to the song. But so this article from January 11th, which didn't get a lot of fanfare, let me actually just duplicate this. And they're making some changes. So for everyone out there who doesn't know, because Google Assistant is actually a pretty popular platform, They're saying that they are depreciating some of their more unnecessary or unused interactions, which to me, Nathan, I'm like, how are these things, like, even if they're underused, how much does it cost to keep the skill? You know, like I've heard rumors that like they lost a lawsuit with, or like a trademark dispute with Sonos, but I don't know if that's really the cause of it. Like, I don't know why, Nathan, they are making the assistant worse for no reason. I don't know.
Well, my biggest question to you is there a competing service that still duplicates the functionality of this? Like, can Echo
the way
do this?
that the functionality kind of overlaps with something else that you can do, you can set up a skill, but of course that goes into your mobile device, and you have to kind of set up this routine that would then do the same thing. But just by saying the words, you know, wake me up at 7:30 with this song, that works, and it used to work, but now after February it will not work. You have to go into the routines and set up the routine, choose the song, that whole thing. And I'm like, why? I don't know.
Well, look, I'm just going to be biased here and say the new digital gold mining right now is music. Like, it defines everything that YouTube does. It defines everything Apple Music and Spotify. Like, the way digital music is, it's sort of like it's how Apple like classifies apps, like how they classify Spotify as one type of app, they classify Netflix as another type of app because of the way the data packets are. And I don't have any knowledge on this, but just knowing what I know about how it works elsewhere is that if you're a music licensee and, you know, like you saw what happened with TikTok a couple weeks ago, how TikTok was going to lose entire catalogs.
Yeah, they lost like all Universal. Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of like that's what made TikTok famous. Like, that's literally what made them famous.
It's what made ByteDance, and it's what made the predecessor to TikTok. And
and you talk to any YouTube person and they'll say it's the bane of their existence, where they get demonetized because they have a clip of a song and there's no guidance on how you can use it. So I imagine it's probably related to that. Like, the idea is that they're basically advertising this as a service without paying royalties.
Let me just real quick, and they have a full list here. I can include it in the show notes. The full list of changes we're making to Google Assistant, and this is from the Google website itself. Playing and controlling audiobooks on Google Play Books with your voice. So you cannot control audiobooks anymore. You have to cast it from your phone, and then you can control it from your phone, but you can't use your voice. Setting or using media alarms, music alarms, or radio alarms with the assistant enabled devices. You can create custom routines with similar behavior, but of course you can't just set it up with your voice. You can using your voice to call a device or broadcast a message to your family group. So Nathan, you can't say, broadcast, and then it would play a voice to everyone in your home. You can't do that anymore. You can't say, hey, call my phone, which, is a pretty useful feature because you want to find your phone. Mm-hmm. You can't make calls with your smart device anymore. They're taking away that functionality. You can't do so many things. Like, they are making this product so much worse, and I don't know why.
Do you remember there's a class action lawsuit going on with Amazon Prime right now? Mm-hmm. Because Amazon decided to basically
is this the ad thing with the
ad thing? Yeah, and to be honest with you, I'm on the side of the consumer here because these companies they're not selling you a product, right? They're selling you a concept service. They're saying, if you buy this plastic thing, you can do these things. Like, they're literally selling the voice control this, voice control that. It's on their commercials. It's everywhere. Same with Amazon. Oh, watch ad free. That's why you're paying for it. You're paying to watch ad free. Oh, that contract you signed? Screw it. We changed it, and you have to put up with it. So if you're buying a box, and you're getting the assumption that these services are part of it, and they're taking it away, then I have two minds of this, and I'm on both sides of it. One, why the hell would you trust Google? Like, is there something in their history that made you want to invest in them?
they do tend to kill products. They do tend to kill services and products.
But on the other hand, though, if you do buy Google, because I know people who have had Google services, then you're not getting what you paid for. That's what I'm saying. And so often I think we've been conditioned like gerbils. Like, what do they say? What's that? What's the whole kerfuffle about software? Like, you don't own software. You license software.
Right.
You don't own anything.
Right.
So we have gotten so used to this idea that we are renting software instead of buying it, instead of buying licenses, that we just put up with it. Like you said, this got, even I didn't hear about this.
Yeah.
But I'm not shocked by it.
So, and I was talking about this with Bridget, and the only thing I can think of, Nathan, they are doing this, and this is after they made huge investments in Gemini, which we're about to talk about. This is after ChatGPT 4 and 4.5. This is after Microsoft, of course, made their big play. And this was, early January, mid-January that they announced this. They're going to end functionality for all this. And again, Nathan, it's stuff like rescheduling Google Calendar appointments using your voice. You can't do that anymore. It's like, I think they're trying to kill their product. I think they are legitimately trying to kill the Google Assistant. And Nathan, you can, so what is today's date? 2/23. So February 23rd, 2024, I'm going to write this down somewhere. I bet within 6 months, they're going to announce they're going to sunset or kill the Google Assistant as you know it. And they are going to have a subscription only. So you can only get it if you have a subscription and you pay them $10, $15, $20 a month, whatever it'll be. And it will replace the Google Assistant. It'll be large language model, AI, whatever you want to call it. And it will be much, much, much more functional, but it will do everything that the Google Assistant does and then some. And I bet that's what they're doing. They don't want a second competing product. They want one thing that you pay $10, $15 a month for.
Google has never shied away from market confusion and discombobulation. Like, this is a company that defines erraticism. Like, this is the company that had 10 chat services, like five different financial services. Are you talking
about Google Meeting, Google Plus, Google Phone, Google?
Yeah. Google operating systems, like, let's go ahead and put Android on, compete against Chrome OS, let's have WebKit, let's have all this stuff. Like, they don't care about their reputation because they've gotten too big to fail. That's their consolidation. Like, how many people out there have TV remotes with like obsolete Google buttons on them that don't work anymore? Mm-hmm. Like Google 411, things like that. So the truth of the matter is, I think you're right, but I think you're partly right. I think you're guessing correctly the piece, like a Lego piece of a bigger puzzle. Like, I know Microsoft is doing this, Apple's doing this. Look, we talked about this last year. Amazon invested billions in Echo. Nobody wants it. It loses them money hand over fist. Like, there's no adoption rate for it. Like 10 years ago when Siri was the hot thing, everybody thought voice assistance was going to be the next thing. And for all intents and purposes, for all the poo-pooing that Apple gets with Siri is still the most useful one because it's basic. Yeah. Hey, add reminder, play song. It can't do everything, but it's never really overpromised. Its basic functionality has remained better than a lot of other competitors, and Apple hasn't sunsetted it. They haven't killed it. They haven't killed it like Google is. They haven't killed it like Amazon.
It takes a lot for Apple to kill something finally. Like, it took them really 15 years to kill the iPod,
Yeah, but they didn't even kill it, though. It evolved.
Yeah.
Like, it evolved into the iPhone. Like, I told you, I was there every step of the way. I had the iPod Touch.
Yeah.
But I'll say this, but Microsoft is getting it with Copilot. I don't know what Apple's plans are. Apple doesn't usually get in until it's a guaranteed moneymaker. But with Google, Google is spaghetti. Google's like, I have all these products, splat. What's gonna stick on the wall? Most of it, no. But you are the beta tester. Yeah. You, me, we're all the beta testers until don't love something. I'm
fairly certain that and obviously I wouldn't be saying if I wasn't certain. I'm fairly certain that I'm right where they're going to put out a more advanced AI because they've already shown in the recent past, like they have the one for like businesses that'll act as like your receptionist, and it will take down messages and schedule appointments and do things for you. Like they're making a pretty big play, so I think it's just an expansion of that kind of technology.
Well, you look at everything else, right? You don't look at the clouds, you look at the birds. Like, are the birds fleeing? There's a storm coming. And I think when you look at the Google Assistant, what Google's doing with this. It's one piece of the puzzle, but they're announcing little things. Oh, we're going to integrate AI into Gmail. We're going to integrate AI into this. Oh, let us help you write the email. Let us help you finish the Google Docs. Let us do it for you. Let us do this assistant for you. Let's just keep doing this for you. AI. You know what? Pretty soon, you don't have to do anything because the AI will do everything for you. AI will write your emails, do your homework, whatever. But I think I'm having misgivings about this whole thing. And I think I can articulate what a lot of people are feeling but have trouble saying, is that I don't trust any of them. I don't trust Google. I don't trust Microsoft.
So
I trust Microsoft more than Google. I trust Microsoft more than Google because Microsoft's a brick and mortar company that actually physically makes things.
Yeah.
But I don't trust Google at all, and I'm getting nervous.
So we're going to talk about Gemini here in just a second, and that's a good thread to kind of pull on. Yeah. But before we do that, you sent over a story about Google tests killing the news tab as well. And for those who don't know, Google actually has been making some pretty big adjustments to, talk about like fundamental like utility type technologies that we depend on. The cached version of websites. Which has been a function if anyone out there has ever had an issue loading a page, or if they have, if there was a paywall or something like that, you could look at the cached version of the website and it usually had something that you were looking for. Nathan, they killed that off like last month or something like that.
Yeah, they announced it. Little fanfare though, because again, that's the old internet. Like the old. It was so useful. Internet.
It's still useful, and I can't believe that they just took it out. But also, it's their service; they can do what they want. So,
well, that's the thing, though. Google, like when Google had their big project, back in the day when Google's motto was "Don't be evil," they were very utopian in how they were going to do things. They were going to use technology for good. We're going to digitize old books. We're going to, like you said, forever imprint websites. But I think at some point, I think this is what we're getting into, is that once Google became so thoroughly dominant in search, they became self-aware with the idea that they needed to be gatekeepers. This is not a new story. This is not new. What we're going to talk about is not new. People have been complaining about what's happening with Gemini for years. But before it was Gemini, it was Google Search. Before it was Google Search, it was keywords.
Right.
Before it was keywords, it was Google Ads. It's a very thorough line that I mentioned I was going to tie it in with the AT&T story, is that it's all downstream. It's like that ancient, what was the ancient Greek story about everyone gets poisoned and they follow it up. They find an ancient, like a dead bison at the beginning of the stream, and that's what was poisoning everything. It's not the water that's the problem. It's the source.
Right.
And I think maybe we should just get into it and get it over with.
Sure. And if you don't want to cover this, killing the news and all that kind of thing.
Oh, I mean, I think it's the same. Well, I think the news thing is similar in the fact that I think it might, if Google does toy with killing the news, that might have to do more with regulations in the EU, like because again,
in the EU or Australia, I think they're getting in trouble in both places. Well, at least Facebook got in trouble for news site or news feeds in Australia. So.
Again, to be honest, though, I mean, we don't really feel that in America so much. But you and I years ago chatted about how you'd have these like ghosting outlets like Huffington Post or whatever, where they would take an article written by the New York Times, reword it, and then give a tertiary link back. Oh, this is the source, but they'd steal all the traffic.
Stealing with credit, absolutely.
Stealing with credit, and this happens quite a bit, by the way.
Oh yeah, and, all the time.
And I mentioned all the video game companies firing people, but it's actually worse in journalism. Like in the world of journalism, they're shuttering everything.
The big story this week was, of course, Vice. They went bankrupt, or they went through bankruptcy proceedings like last month or the month before, and they were
BuzzFeed
purchased
is laying
by
off again.
Yeah, and now they're just, and I think now they laid off pretty much everyone, and everything's just like, in stasis until they figure out what they're going to do.
I'll say this. I have no love for Vice or BuzzFeed for practical reasons, but I hate to see anybody lose their job. But the problem is, it's very similar to Gemini. It's very similar to the news, is that it's not actually news. It's content. And I think when you talk about journalism, you and I can have a conversation about ethics and about, objectivity and bias and prerogative and mission statement. We can talk about that. That's a college course in journalism, which you and I don't really talk about. We talk about fun stuff, but we do talk about it. Like people say there's no such thing as objectivity. Like there was a big story last week about Jon Stewart returning to the Daily Show. Record numbers. People really wanted him back. But the base wasn't ready for him because like, oh, how dare he talk about both sides?
Yeah.
Because because that segment doesn't want journalism. They don't want it because we've passed that point, Ben. Because now
it's the idea of the bubbles that we've kind of set up for ourselves.
Exactly.
We've excluded the things that we don't like or we don't agree with, and we have only included things that we do agree with. And it's an addiction. It's a dopamine addiction like anything else. Like if I go to McDonald's and I order a burger, I don't want a salad. You know what I mean? I don't want a salad. I don't even want that lettuce on there. Get that off. Yeah. But like, that's similar. Yeah. So this is a good time to jump into what's probably going to be the bulk of our conversation, and we'll still try to keep it concise and clear. And Google's Gemini has been drawing has trouble drawing white people, which is a tweet by an AI researcher who was just. Essentially, Gemini is the new image generator. I think it used to be called Google Image Generator, but they renamed it to Gemini or something like that. And researchers, at first it was a researcher, but then everyone kind of picked it up, and they've been trying to generate images with a pretty inane prompt. Like they don't really try to goad it. They say, if you scroll down into the article, you see the tweet, and they have. This here, and you can see, here, image of Australian woman, image of American woman, image of British woman, like, pretty general, not specific prompts, and it returned, not a lot of white people. That was kind of the issue. And then people dug a little bit further. They were looking for, medieval knights. They were looking for samurais. They were looking for founding fathers. I think generated a lot of criticism. And Nathan,
the best one, the people of color Nazis.
Yes.
So that's the best one. But people got upset over that. They didn't get upset.
Why don't you go ahead and give us a good outline for what the Sure. So let's assume people have been living under rocks and they don't understand what's the big problem.
Sure. Broad scope, broadly drawn. Gemini is the latest Google effort to do auto image generation, and people discovered very, very quickly that you and I were chatting about this before about data sets and how AI is trained. But that's not what's happening here. This is not a new thing. This is not a new story. If you've been following Google for a long time, this is not a new story. Google has been tinkering with their search results for a long time. They've been accused of this before about introducing bias. The whole concept is that they call computer learning is based on bias. And they say if it's trained on models that are mostly like white man throughout history, then that's going to be the bias. That's it. If you type in "show me scientists," it'll show you Edison or Isaac Newton or something. It's not going to probably show you Jay-Z, right? That's just how it goes. But the fact is that somewhere along the line, and I think Google's kind of acknowledged it before, but they haven't really wink acknowledged it, is that they said, well, okay, we're going to correct the overrepresentation of white data samples by introducing diversity. The problem with that is that that's not congruent with reality. The simple fact is when people are searching for something, like a simple text search on Google, I'm going to search for something. People don't realize, Ben, you know this, is that you're not getting a search result, you're getting an advertisement. Like Google's been sued over this, whether it's they preference their own products or they preference people that are paid. But that's a capitalistic decision. I'm going to pay you so my search result comes in first. That's money transaction. That has nothing to do with ethics.
Right.
What Google's doing, Google has decided, and again, some of you may agree with this. Some of you may think, okay, well, we need to diversify search results. We need to have better, more nuanced search results. I'm all for it. The problem, though, is that a better search result needs to be based on data and facts, not feelings. I hate using that term because that's a right-wing term. But the fact of the matter is, if you overcorrect, if you think that white people are overrepresented in Western civilization, you may have a point. But you don't fix it by cutting them out, which Google has been found guilty of doing. You think that your opinion was before, if I can paraphrase what you told me, is that you think these are the results of them seeing images of certain things that are popular and biasing it. I don't think so at all. I think this is the result of someone going into the data models and removing certain parameters to be underrepresented. In fact, I even sent you a story where one of their engineers was caught doing that, caught talking about that. He had to scrub his Twitter account. Like, I don't even know his name, but Jack Krosky, whatever.
Project?
Yeah. I mean, Google, no one's going to be shocked if I tell you that Google is, populated by people who, adhere towards left-wing policies. No one's going to be shocked by that. Be shocked if it wasn't. But the fact is that you go in there and we talk about implicit bias. We talk about overcorrection. We talk about diversity. I'll give you a funny joke. I'll give you a funny example. If you watch BBC, if you've watched any of BBC's shows in the last 5 years, they represent like Queens of England as African American. They represent Vikings as African American. Like they don't who to historical accuracy at all. And people have complained about they upset Egypt by representing Cleopatra as a woman of color. They upset a whole country.
I will say I am a huge fan of documentaries. Don't get me started on Cleopatra. Holy cow, that was the worst stuff ever. But you see though, but that's what I'm saying. This is just a tip of an iceberg, and we could go down very different paths. So we have to be very careful how we talk about it. So what my understanding is, and you're right, I could be completely wrong on this, and I accept responsibility for that. But so the AI can only.
Ben. I don't think you're wrong though. I didn't want to.
No.
Give the impression that
this is the impression I'm getting, and there is something wrong. I'm not saying that they have, messed with the data. Obviously, they've messed with the data because that's their job. Their job is to feed these things data to then give you accurate results. It's just like a search engine. You need to have things categorized, labeled, and have everything good to go, and then it can spit out something that's relevant. Now, what I think is happening here is Google, and it's really no secret, they have just scraped the internet in general. They've just scraped all images, all words. I think there's a new deal for Reddit to be paid $60 million a year or something like that, so that your Reddit user comments, which is going to be hilarious when people see how awful those comments are. They're like, it's whatever's on the internet, whatever gets popular, whatever gets found is all scraped and compiled and put into these data sets. And really, the bigger, the larger. And ideally, you have very talented, very good people that can, give it good, sanitized data, where it's accurate labels, it's very, it's very well, kind of put in there, just with all the different tags and stuff. Like there really is a science behind it. And Nathan, what I think is happening here is, no one ever claimed that these things were historically accurate. But what they do claim is that, these are images of founding fathers. So let's say someone on their own DeviantArt page, whatever it may be, said, "Here's my idea of a black founding father," and they dress up the founding father, make it look black, whatever, and that's the image that's uploaded. If they're not careful Hamilton? And they don't put in like fictitious or whatever, like this is a reimagining of this situation, then you can get situations like that. If you say founding fathers and presidents, because a lot of the founding fathers were presidents, which I'm looking at this image here. If you're watching the video portion, you can see it here. This is one of the this is an image generation of an American founding father. And to me, at least just to my untrained eye, Nathan, this looks like Barack Obama mixed with, George Washington, the powdered wig kind of conventional thing. To me, Nathan, this is not good data. I guess kind of like, labeling, and it's mixing, and AI works as like a word soup. It's mixing it all and spitting out something that they never claimed it was, which is a historically accurate model. So,
well, they actually quite the opposite. They actually in the results they will actually use the word, "Here is a diverse mix of pictures." Like it's an oversampling it's an under representation of historical accuracy. It's an oversampling of what they call traditionally marginalized people, and it is a favoritism of diversity over reality. And again, these are all things that are not shocking to anybody who pays attention. Like, this, everybody knows this. Like, it's been in the news the last 6 months about diversity, equity, investment. We all understand that there are people that feel that in order to correct the imbalance of systemic racism, we need to put our thumb on the scale to rebalance. That is nonsense. It doesn't work like that when you're talking about history. If you're talking about historical data, if you're talking about representation, you simply cannot make the argument that a certain people have been systemically harmed, but then not present how or why they were harmed. People are going to look at, like, I remember there was a movie called The Patriot with Mel Gibson years ago, back when Hollywood was aghast. They would not mention the word slavery in a PG-13 movie. We got rid of Song of the South. We can't have slavery. We can't have that. Everything has to be representational. And I remember this is a movie about the Revolutionary War. They did not use the word slaves. They used the word helpers or workers.
Yeah.
Like, oh, sounds pretty good to me. I want to work, but you go in there and you have misrepresentation of history because we're no longer concerned with accuracy. We're concerned with representation and feelings. And the problem, though, is that it's just it maybe it works in a Disney movie, but it doesn't work in reality. It's ridiculous.
When I use image generation, and first of all, I would never put in a one word prompt that is just so basic, and whatever you get, you're gonna get. But also, Nathan, like, I don't know, to me, like, first of all, I don't even know why I would generate this. Let's say maybe for a slideshow, and I wanted an AI generated founding father instead of one of the many, many, many beautiful pieces of artwork of founding fathers. Even if I wanted to use an AI generated one, if I gave it such a basic prompt, which I think leads to a lot of these messed up pictures that people are sharing, because AI needs direction. Like, prompts are not just, give me banana, and it turns out it's a minion, meme. I'm just saying, Nathan, like, why, if I got that and I'm trying to do something serious, like I'm not just trying to get clickbait, I would say, okay, that's not what I want. Painting of founding father, or why didn't I put, historically accurate founding father, or even just throw in the word white? Why not? If that's what you're looking for, that's what you're looking for. Why should I care about image generation of a 1 or 2 word prompts? Those are so mixed,
because they reveal that the results have been tinkered with. For example, under no circumstances would you ever type in, show me a Viking in 15th century and get a black person. Like, that's just not going to happen. But that's all you get. And that is so consistent. That bias is so consistent throughout every single query. Every single one. But if you type in, show me scientists, show me this, show me an Irishman in the 17th century, show me that, show me anything, you will get 100% consistency that there is clear and implicit bias against showing white people on this. And that is racist. It's racist. Like, there's no other way around it. Like, there are the hands of Google saying that white people are overrepresented in history. We need to correct it. Like, you ever see the movie Malcolm X with Denzel Washington?
No, but I'm familiar with the story. And
so there's a scene when they're in the prison and the chaplain's teaching the class and they're talking about Jesus, and it's the classic thing, like, was Jesus white? And the pastor's like, oh, of course Jesus was white. And he looks at a picture of Jesus on the wall. Isn't it obvious? And Malcolm X says, well, that's obvious. The picture. Because a lot of people's impressions of history come through visual images. We didn't have photographs back then. We painted, right? Of course, Jesus wasn't a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy. We know that now. History has strained away those biases, and we now know that Jesus was not a blonde-haired, blue-eyed person. We know this. But that's how he was represented, because the people who created the images created in their own image. If you go to China, they draw Jesus as Chinese. In Japanese, they draw him as Japanese. Like, in Africa, they draw him as African. Like, we have black Santas now, but Santa's not real. That's not real. That's fun. That's a fun correction to this. But when you're talking about actual data sets in history, You can't do that. Like literally your goal, if you're going to be the gatekeeper of facts, you can't do that. It's not racist for saying that your representation of history is inaccurate. It's not an accident. It's not an accident. It's not an accident when 100% of the data samples are skewed. 100%. Here's the funny thing. No one complained when they showed like George Washington as black. That's actually kind of cool. It's actually kind of fun. We can have fun with it. But people really got mad when they started showing Nazis as black or Asian Nazis because, we didn't want that type of diversity. Why not? They could be black Nazis.
I'm going to withhold my kind of anger on this one because, Nathan, I really mean it. AI does not do well with general prompts. Like, it'll spit something out and you may enjoy it and may be fun. The more specific and more detailed a prompt you give it, the better the image output will be. And I know that, you're saying that just, if you put in 15th century Viking, you should get things that look like 15th century Vikings. You shouldn't get reimaginings. Yes. You shouldn't get, things that were never, but you can add more to historically accurate, or like you can add to that prompt. They're just not doing it. They're posting it on Twitter and complaining.
Let me give you an example. Here's the thing though. If I put Japanese samurai, my first thing should not be Hokusai, I forget the actual name. There was a black samurai, like a historically black samurai. But the fact of the matter is that what you have here is an egregious overcorrection by overzealous people who are not being good gatekeepers of the data sets, and that's a problem. Like if we talk about the internet as a public utility, right? Like if my taxes pay for a road, and if that's classified as a utility, in Europe, they classify the internet as a utility. Like the idea is that these are the systems we use that are gatekeeping our history and everything. There was a Simpsons episode years and years ago where they showed in the future, like the school system was being run by Pepsi. Do you remember this? Where Pepsi was like the sponsor of public schools, and the teacher's on the board. He's like, "Can anyone tell me what 2 + 2 is?" And the kid raises his hand and says, "Pepsi," and the teacher says, "Partial credit." And that's a problem though, is that we're not talking about Marvel movies. We're not talking about Wakanda. We're not talking about Doctor Strange, and we're not talking about revisionist history. We're talking about facts and data. And the problem is that I get it. We want to have a better version of the future that's more historically accurate. But
I just feel like AI is not history. It's not a history teacher.
But this is going to replace, like you said, you think Google is going to replace Google Assistant with a paid service that does this. Okay, this is the future of Google. Like this is their data model. This is not new, Ben. They've been doing this on Google Images for a very long time. It's just now gone out of control. Like people have noticed these odd, like, aberrances and stuff. And I want to be clear. It's not to say that you should not have black people or Asian people or Hispanic people show up in searches, because those people were present then too. The problem though is that if you look at a data set, if you say what was the population of Ireland in 1880, what was the demographics of Ireland? It's probably going to be 99.9999% pasty white people with red hair. Okay, you're not going to have someone who looks like Barack Obama representing Ireland in 1889. That's just not going to happen. That's not going to be the default. But that's what's happening here, because somewhere in Google's data sets, there's a de-emphasis of white people in their data sets. And it's so obvious throughout all of this nonsense. It's almost hysterical. Like you couldn't write it. Like William Gibson couldn't have written a funnier book about this if he wrote about this. It's hilarious in a way, but it's also troubling because they didn't take it seriously.
So I think this does highlight, and I'm still not 100% on board, which is okay. We can disagree about this, but one thing I do not like about AI, and that I think a lot of these companies are going to have to come together and really have a reckoning with, Nathan, which I completely agree with, is this idea of a black box. This idea of we put in data, magic happens, we shake it all up, and whatever comes out, we don't know how it works. It trained itself. It programmed itself. It did everything itself. I think that there being some kind of secret sauce, secret formula that all these companies are chasing because they want the best AI that they can train, That's not going to fly for much longer. I think there does need to be some transparency and some openness about the data you put in, any further influences that you had on it, and how does the data come out? Like, there needs to be more transparency on how these things are generated, and that's probably going to take a regulation, because they can patent it all they want. They don't want to share it, and I think that's an issue.
Well, companies are suing though. Like you have companies that are suing because, like, book publishers was the largest grievance group, where they were suing these AI models because they were training their AI models based on their books without their permission. You're going to see this with music. You're going to see this with movies. You're going to see this with stuff. The idea is that your content is going to be used as data models to model this. But again, I just want to say this. We can have fun with this. We can have fun with alternate history. We can have fun with data models. But the problem, though, is that, and rightfully so, if I put in AI, said generate civil rights leader who wrote "I Have a Dream," and I get Robert Downey Jr. showing up, that wouldn't be right. It's not that it's not funny or anything, but the problem is, this isn't a game. Like, I get what the correction's trying to do, but those of us who want history to be history, so we can study it, so we can look at it, so we can take a look at it and say, how can we do better? You can't do better if you're fudging the numbers this badly and this poorly, and it's based on an undefined agenda.
And there's also my idea that there's AI generation is not supposed to be, and maybe you do create something that is a separate entity that is, or maybe even a setting that is historically accurate, but AI by default is not supposed to be historically accurate. It's not supposed to be any of those things. It just is.
But it is being passed off as a result.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. No,
for sure.
It's not being passed off.
There needs to be more education on the public's part, and there needs to be more openness with Google and Microsoft and OpenAI, whatever it may be, that what you generate is not accurate or real. So,
by the way, and I said this is nothing new. I'll go back 200 years before Google, right? Again, if you have a predominantly, white Anglo-Saxon community writing history books, their representation of history is going to look like them. Like, that's their bias. If we don't have a lot of contact with Africans, then we're going to have, like, let's be honest, historically inappropriate representations, and we're going to have Asian people that look stereotypical. We're going to have a lot of things that need to be corrected through facts. And the problem is that we now live in a society where we have such access to all this stuff. And I don't want to go backwards and say, well, we're going to refunnel history through this prism. No, just show accurate things. Like, okay, I'm sorry. There was a preponderance of this particular people at this time. Can't change it. Don't want to change it. Let's move forward. Yeah. But as someone who loves history, I don't want this Disneyfication.
But then there's also people that are going to say, what if I do put in founding fathers, dark skin, and I generate something like that. Like, but that's okay too, right? Like, you can get the results that you were getting. It's just you should have specified that that's the result that you wanted.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly true. Like, if you're talking about image generation based on parameters that are not default, like if you put in founding father United States, right, then you probably shouldn't get Crispin Attucks. You know who that is?
No.
Crispin Attucks was the first man killed in the Revolutionary Wars, Boston Massacre. We're going to have data sets like this, but the problem is that, and to be honest with you, there's one thing that really ticks me off more than anything else. It's the superficiality of all this, the surface level. Like, we're talking about black Nazis and black founding fathers. Somewhere along the line at Google, and somewhere along the line at Disney, and somewhere along the line at BBC, and somewhere along the line at every movie company out there, has decided, they all got together in a big conspiracy room, obviously, and said, you know what? Black people are a gimmick. Let's just overrepresent black people to show how woke we are. And that is more racist and offensive than anything I can think of. Because it's one thing to say, what are your merits as a human being? What are your accomplishments as a culture? What are your accomplishments as this and that, as a person? But no, we think black skin is cool and we're going to put it on everything because that's awesome and that's trending. And I find that way more offensive than anything else. And I think a lot of, like, I have a lot of black friends who feel the same way. They what's the word? What's the expression they use? Like, my culture is not costume.
Right.
Like, I'm not a gimmick. It's funny. Funny.
I've heard that
but
too.
It's
It's again just the fact that, I don't know, you can get these results with some more specificity. Like, you can ask for, British woman if she were black, or you can say, you can get these results either way. It's just you're kind of getting them by default, which, might not be the case. But also, Nathan, I so hate that they're using such broad, undefined language, and that's not how AI image generation thrives. It's just not how it works.
Let me give you an example, like a real example. If I type in "show me black scientist," I don't want a black version of Thomas Edison. I don't want a black Isaac Newton. I want George Washington Carver.
So,
I want a real person. Show me a real person instead of palette swapping a white person.
So
because that's offensive.
But that's not how AI works. It's literally a soup. You throw in everything that the model is trained on, scientist, black, whatever words you put in, and then it'll spit out a result. And you might just get what you just said.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, Ben. I don't think people are making that distinction. I think people are becoming immune to the idea that AI is not real. Like, if I say to you, again, if I go to McDonald's and I say, give me a burger, and you give me a salad, that's not what I wanted. So if I want to generate founding father or something, I don't think people are making the distinction that when they look at AI, because if you go to Bing right now, they throw AI in your face. Like, they preface AI over Google search, over image search. So I think people are becoming used to doing AI as the default image search. In their brains, AI is replacing actual search. And
that is a misunderstanding on their part, for sure.
Exactly. But to be honest with you, though, that's how we're being trained, because every time I go online, every time you go online, that's all we hear about. AI is going to write your email. AI is going to do your job creation. AI is going to make your life easier. AI is going to be an assistant. AI is going to drive your car. AI is going to book your vacation. So why not AI just
By
do
the way,
Google search for you?
There's a website, deepai.org. I've been looking at, like, you can see other people's images that they create. Holy cow. Some of you people are hilarious, and I don't know. Some of these images are so fun.
I think I agree with everything you're saying up to a point, because where you and I diverge is that I think people are starting to become used to the idea of AI as the default search. And I think that's a problem, but I don't think Google thinks it was a problem. I think they think it was a solution, and that's the problem. Like, you can have this fun thing. I love the fact that we can have, like, black founding fathers and black Nazis and everything. Go for it. Look at that.
Bernie Sanders playing disc golf. Man. Yeah.
Is that Bernie Sanders?
Bernie Sanders playing disc golf.
Where's his mittens? Yep. But what I'm saying, though, what's going to happen, though, and I hate to say this to anybody listening, but I'm right. Some people just don't care enough to tell the difference between reality and disreality. We're going into presidential elections where the FCC just banned AI robocalls because people can't tell the difference. You had Will Smith the other day mocking the AI spaghetti of him eating spaghetti because he didn't like the idea that someone had AI generating him eating spaghetti. They're getting really good. Like, at some point, AI will replace a lot of things that we take for granted. And its
very nature, it is a deceptive technology. It takes something that didn't exist before, and whatever you want it to spit out, it will spit out. It is, by its very nature, it's essentially Photoshop, but all you have to do is describe what you want, and anyone can create it.
Can I go one step further?
Mm-hmm.
It's the closest thing we've ever had to, like, looking at parallel realities. Like, for the first time ever, you can use your keyboard and just type some text, and you can literally recreate something from scratch, like, that would have been impossible, like, 10 years ago, because you have photorealism, it's pretty real now. It's going to get a lot better. It's going to get a lot better. And like you can have phone apps that swaps out faces on movies in real time. That's better than what Hollywood's doing.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like we're about to, like, AI is going to upend everything. But the issue, what's not going to change, is that human beings have the uncanny valley effect. Like we have trouble distinguishing fake from reality. And you and I understand this because we're enmeshed in it. But I guarantee you, Ben, sometimes you and I see images, we don't know if they're real or not. We've become so used to seeing Photoshop. We're so trained on seeing fake women and fake men. We don't know. Like, and every time you see like Kim Kardashian with like an extra leg or a toe sticking out because someone failed to Photoshop, it's kind of funny. But let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. If you see that fake photo of Kim Kardashian, do you say, wow, that's a Photoshop fail? But then do you ever stop to think that all her photos are Photoshops?
Yeah, and that is an issue that has been tackled by a lot of agencies where if you digitally alter any photo, even if it's to airbrush someone's skin to make it a little bit smoother, no wrinkles, get rid of acne or blemishes, they have disclaimers. And that's all I'm asking for with AI is
which they talked about. Yeah, the
people openly put disclaimers on AI images, and it's not even like this image was AI generated, because if there's any kind of like watermark or anything like that, they can just cut that off and just repost the image. There's no point in that. It's more so I want to see these companies not just have black boxes. There should not be this idea that everything is so secret, not even we know what's going on. Well, that's unacceptable.
It's not like caricatures where the heads are giant and it's obviously a parody, right? Like in the United States, Larry Flint of Penthouse went to the Supreme Court about fair use and parody, right? Where he could parody a real person in a realistic environment, because the assumption was the American audience understood it was fake. That was the whole preference on that decision, that the American public would realize that such and such politician was not going to have sex with his mother in an outhouse. Like, we all knew that was fake. But now, though, we don't know. Like, things are so plausible. Like, we live in a weird reality where you have presidential candidates who do this and do that and do this, do that. Like, there are literally articles out there. Is Biden fake? Is he a body double? Is Trump real? And you have to question it, because do you remember that thing that came out about 2 years ago with Joe Biden's White House, where they actually revealed like his White House is a studio set underground? It's actually not. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And it's because it's a controlled environment, right? Like there's a fake window with a fake view of outside, but it's underground. It's not real. But if you crop all that out, it looks real. What's real? What's not real?
I have fortunately been in this long enough to remember back when automatic touch up and even voice kind of voice generation, stuff like that, like, and I say old enough, it's been like 5 or 6 years. It has not been that long, Nathan. Like, we had to come to terms with that as well, is that what you hear may not be real, what you see may not be real. That is, and like, I think just knowing that, when Photoshop first came on the scene, when all that kind of thing, like, I don't know, there was some photographer back in the late 1800s that took 2 different photos, one of his cat and one of a person in a suit, and then did some stuff in the red room and spliced them together, and that's essentially a Photoshop. Obviously a man does not have a cat's head. I think people have been and need to continue to be aware that what they see and what they hear is, there's a chance it's not real. There's a chance it's not real.
I would say the biggest analogy that's relevant would be the old Stalinistic photos, where with the early KGB, where Stalin would erase people from photos back in the 40s and 50s. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
They would just cut someone out. And they're a pretty good job by those standards, right? But it's like that's their historical record. Like, that person wasn't there. Even though we have original photos, we could see it, but the official record is not there. And that's what goes down. And that's why I have trouble with this Google AI stuff, is that there are people who will take what they see, and this is how it works. They will take it because they're probably, the results are probably going to be really, really good, right? that's going to be the imprint that it gives on them, that this is the reality. And it's one thing to say, I'm not offended by what you're looking at. I'm not offended. I think that's kind of funny. I think that's cute. But, like when we had Hamilton, no one's complaining that Hamilton wasn't an accurate representation of the fact. They also didn't sing hip hop either. But it's fun. We have fun with it. I
would not be surprised, Nathan. Like, Google's going to go back. They're going to, maybe tinker with the algorithm, the algorithm a little bit. This issue will never be solved. This is a fundamental, I don't even want to say flaw, is a fundamental behavior of AI, which is to take everything and spit out something that you want. And I promise you, if they come back online and let people generate people on Gemini in a week, a month, a year, you will get this. Like, you can sit there and click generate 1,000 times. Eventually, Nathan, you will get this. You will get something similar to this. It will never be completely fixed.
I'm not a libertarian by any means, but I'm of the idea, when I look at history, I don't need a trigger warning. Like, I'll read a book about corrective history, or about, if I read about Columbus, I don't want to read about all the good things Columbus did. I want to read about the bad things. I want to know the truth. That's who I am. I don't have an agenda. I'm not offended by history. It happened a long time ago. I can learn from it. That's what I want. That's how I view it. I understand not everybody's like that. Some people want to see more representation. They want to find themselves in history. They want to see more examples of greatness. I get it. I think the goal of search engines, the goal of anything, should be to bring that information closer to you, make it easier to find and define. But history is not zero sum. There is not only so much to go around. It's unlimited. History's happening right now. Happened 5 minutes ago. So the goal of all these search engines should be to, as fairly as possible, as objectively as possible, warts and all, to present the person looking with the most fair, honest, unbiased, and accurate representation of what is, and not what they think it should be. And I don't think that's out of bounds. I don't think it's a hard ask. I don't think that.
Yeah. No. You're absolutely right in so much of that. My main issue with all this kerfluffle is they're not using AI correctly. They really aren't. They gave it as minimal as possible, direction, prompts, whatever, and that's not where AI thrives, and it's not where AI does its best work, or really any work. This is not good outrage. It's, Google took it down, and they're going to tinker with it, and they're going to do something. Hey, if there's room for improvement, they're going to do it. Well, I feel like this is not worthy of outrage.
I'll just say this. I think it's worthy of a little outrage, only because I think we need to keep people honest. And I think by expressing our displeasure at falsification of data sets right now, this is the time to do it. Like, AI is at its infancy. This is the time to start imposing strictures on them. This is the time to say, we're going to watch you and we're going to keep you honest. I remember a couple years ago where there was a presidential debate. I forget who it was with, but you can look it up. But they were talking about the definition of something. And in real time, people started recording. Do you remember this? I think it was Merriam-Webster. They changed the definition of a word in real time during the presidential debate to favor one of the candidates. In real time. They actually looked at it in real time. Because that's very Orwellian. The idea is that if you change the definition, you change the meaning. If you change the meaning, you change the outcome. And I think that's, to some extent, Ben, that's a little what's happening here. And I'm not going to ascribe nefariousness. I'm not going to say the people meant ill will or they wanted genocide of a race or anything. I don't think that's it at all. But I think the road to hell is always paved with good intentions. And I think it's one thing to say we want to add a corrective to history, which is fine. But I do think that if you're going to be a gatekeeper, if you're going to be someone who takes on the mantle of this responsibility, then it's a big responsibility, and it's going to require persistence, and it's going to require, constant vigilance.
It's going to require oversight. It really is, and we don't have
exactly.
that.
Exactly. And honestly, I look forward to all the kerfuffles that happen, because I'm not offended by this because I think it's hilarious, but at some point though, history needs to be protected. Like that, as human beings, that's all we got. That's all we are. Like we just need we need accuracy.
But also, that's not history. AI generation is not history. It's just not. You know, if you went into a museum and they change pictures hanging on the wall, yeah. But
in 2012, Steven Spielberg made the movie Lincoln, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a very
is that the one where he was killing vampires and werewolves?
No, that was the sequel.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, that's the expanded Lincoln universe.
Okay.
By the way, and Lincoln was played by Denzel Washington. So anyway, which I would actually kind of love to see. But anyway, there's a scene when they're voting on the Civil Rights Amendment. I think it was 14th Amendment, 13th or 14th Amendment. And there's a scene, and this actually happened. You know, that actually happened. You know, the Constitution vote. I think it was to abolish slavery. And in the movie version, they showed the state of Connecticut voting no, right?
Well, it's more dramatic that way.
But it's not what happened. And I was like, wait a minute, that didn't happen. Like Connecticut voted yes, they were a northern state. And I read an interview with Spielberg and said, oh, we wanted to show that racism existed in the North, and so we took some liberties. I was like, but it didn't happen. Like I get what you're
I have a hard time explaining this to Craig when he comes at me with Turing. Turing. There was that movie. And he tries to quote it at me as if it were historical fact. Turing is so Hollywoodized.
Yeah, it's because, well, here's the thing, though. Like, a lot of people didn't know who Turing was. They didn't even know the Turing test. Mm-hmm. But, you know, they glamorized it. But honestly, I'll say this. I don't look to Hollywood, and I never have, for historical accuracy. If you really want to hoot, go look at historians tearing apart the Napoleon movie that just came out.
Yes.
You won't ever get to sleep. So don't look to Hollywood for that. But a lot of people do. And I'll say this in your defense, Hollywood fakery and phonery has not changed history. Like, there's still real historians. There are still real history books. There's still real stuff. And they get fixed, they get modified. And you're right. I don't think AI is going to change the history. But I think going forward, though, it's one thing to say you can look at that photo of a Black founding father and you can laugh at it and say, of course, that's not real. But what happens when it becomes more subtle? What happens when the message becomes less obvious and it does influence you? And I don't know what that could look like. Maybe it's a political message. Maybe it's a medicine message.
That's where you wrap the conversation back around to objectivity and knowing, and really, you know, when it comes to journalism, knowing your biases help you avoid falling into them.
That's not the trend, though.
But no, it's not the trend. But that's how you break the trend. And trust me, in the past, and you know this better than anyone, in the past we have not done that. In the future, we will not do that.
Speak for
the public
yourself.
is very different. Well, I'm talking like a population at large.
Yes, yeah. We are biased creatures. We click up. It is our nature. It is our instinct to sidle up with our team. But I will say this, on your show that you invite me onto once in a while, I think sometimes, and I've gotten feedback from people, that if they hear me express one opinion, they think, oh, he's conservative. And if they hear me on something else, they may think I'm liberal. And the truth of the matter is, both are true. You know, both are true. I have my personal things. I have my biases like anybody else. But when I'm talking to you about a subject, I put that aside as much as I can. It's hard, right? It's hard. It's not easy. But I'm going to try to give you what I think is the unbiased view of it. And that's hard.
Because you will never get rid of your biases. And now we're about to get into, you know, kind of journalism, all that kind of thing. But like, you will never get rid of your biases. We operate on our biases for a reason. But knowing them can potentially help you from falling into them. And it's not that you're going to dispel them or get rid of them, but you at least knowing them is important. And I think that's true for everything that we do. And AI is not, you know, should not be one of those things that we ignore. Yeah.
We have bias, right? But we also have prejudice and we have preference, right? And the idea is that, like, you can preference would be like, I like apples. I like the way they taste. I don't like pears because I think they're too bitter. That's a preference, right? A bias is that I grew up with apples and I never grew up with pears. So you can infer that maybe I like apples because I didn't grow up with pears. You could infer that. But the truth of the matter is, objectivity would be what would you like better, apples or pears? And objectivity would say, well, let me look at your background and help you make a decision. It's not impossible. And I think I hear people all the time say, you can't be objective, it's a fallacy. No, that's BS. I'm telling you right now, that's BS. Like, you can do it. It's a learned behavior.
Yeah.
You have to, like anything else.
But it's hard because you have to think and you have to judge.
I'll tell you the problem with it. It's not as fun, because being prejudiced is fun. Being biased is fun as hell, because you have all these friends. Like, if I was
reaffirming your feelings is always fun. Yeah.
You know what it's like to be an independent, to watch a presidential debate and not be able to root for anybody, like, because you recognize the BS on both sides. But it's just like, if you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan, you get a whole bunch of people to party with when they win the Super Bowl. If you're a 49ers fan, you don't got nobody to party with. It's like, it's more fun being biased, especially if you're on the winning side.
Yeah.
But that's not journalism. So you're a journalist, believe it or not. You're a journalist. You do a good job.
I think that I think anyone could do what I do, but no. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap that up.
I can do it.
I think that we have wrapped up that topic, and honestly, we didn't get too bad. There's nothing in there that I feel bad about saying. So thank you for bringing that up. Really, it was a good conversation. Where's my timer? Yeah, we have run long, and I didn't want to take this because you're sick, but also I wanted to cover all these topics. Let's do some of these quicker, and then we're going to wrap up the show. Walmart, you remember them? They're here and there. They're your local neighborhood mom and pop store of a billion people that work for them. They are buying VIZIO, which honestly,
this is cool. This is interesting.
Yeah, which honestly, like, VIZIO has had a few iterations. At one point in the early 2010s, they were very, very popular. And then they kind of switched over but they were popular because they were so cheap, and they were selling them at a loss almost, and not really trying to, they were taking your data, repackaging it, and selling it to advertisers and other people. That's how they were kind of funding their business.
I was a huge fan of VIZIO. Like, I was one of those people that said, wow, VIZIO is like, I can't afford Samsung, so I'll get VIZIO.
They made great budget TVs. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they did. But here's the problem. But I remember the moment that it was over. It was at CES, I think 2012, I think it was. And VIZIO was still an emergent brand. They were still on the way up. Like, they weren't they weren't a power player. They weren't Panasonic or Sony or whatever, but they acted like it. And I remember they went all in on this 3D thing. They went all in. And I was like, well, that was fun. Like, and I don't think, and then another competitor came out and wiped the floor with them, and that was TCL.
Yep.
Like, TCL has assumed the mantle of which VIZIO has had, and they've done a much better job of it.
Yep. And of course, VIZIO has been sued for, again, the data procurement. They had a lot of competition from other cheap brands. Like, they really pioneered this idea that, before, having like a 60-inch TV in your living room was a status symbol. People spent thousands. And then VIZIO came out and said, you can get a 55-inch TV for $300, and the next closest 55-inch, and with a good 720p picture, it was great. And the next highest the next competitor was like $600 or $700. They really made a lot of waves when they first came out, but they struggled to maintain it. And honestly, Walmart buying VIZIO, because I think VIZIO was available in Best Buys and things like that, but Walmart was the main place that people bought VIZIOs, because they had them right out there. Just pick up a box and go. So
it's funny though. At the time, though, people forget there was a bunch of those cheap Chinese competitors, because a lot of the panels were being made in Korea. Yeah, I think by Sharp and Samsung. But you remember there were two big competitors with VIZIO. There was Hanspree and Daewoo. Remember? And I always remember the Daewoo commercials. Yeah, exactly. Well, I think they also made cars. I had a Hanspree monitor, loved it. I had a 21-inch Hanspree 1080p monitor with HDMI input with sound output, $99. $99, and this was 2007. So, but anyway, Daewoo, they also did cars, and I remember this commercial. They showed a Daewoo car like on a half track going up and down. I'm like, this is not making me want a TV, but they're gone. They're gone too. But yeah, look, good. God bless VIZIO. I wish them the best and past their troubles. But again, I want to be clear. Like, that space has been has been taken over by TCL, and so they have a huge road to hoe.
It's Walmart scooping up a brand that was probably already on the way out, but they are, and just reading the article that you sent, what I said was that VIZIO was scraping people's watching habits, selling it to advertisers, that whole thing. It looks like that is still the use case for VIZIO TVs. You still have to have, I guess, like an internet connection to kind of watch TV on these things. They're going to serve you ads. Obviously, it can be used just as a monitor, but to use all the smart services.
That's what they all do, though.
This is Walmart's play into really the field that Amazon is already doing.
Well,
so...
It's funny though. Like, I wonder what this means for Walmart's house brand, ONN. Like I'm actually a fan of ONN. Have you ever used their stuff before? It's cheap.
I have.
Yeah, they actually make my favorite Android tablet. Like, if you go to Walmart and look up Android tablets, they have like an $89 like ONN tablet. They even have like a Tablet Pro. You can't beat it for the price. Like, you get pretty good technology for nothing. But everything's ONN. It's that cheap house brand. It's not expensive. It's pretty good. It's cheap as hell. Probably won't last forever. So I wonder what's going to happen. You can't have two house brands. Remember, Best Buy did that with Rocket Fish.
Yeah.
And what was the other one Best Buy did? Oh my goodness, they had a couple of those cheap like house brands. They basically just repackaged Chinese crap.
They're probably going to phase VIZIO in because VIZIO just doesn't have the name brand recognition that they did. Like there's obviously some leftover, but it's not like, oh, VIZIO, perfect. That's just what I was looking for. No one really thinks that anymore. So I'm betting they folded in with that. So anyways, there's that story. Walmart going to buy VIZIO, $2.3 billion, which is, kind of like people who scooped up Yahoo. I mean, it's just a brand on the way out. So good luck to them.
Yeah, that's really cheap though. I thought it was like $23 billion. No, 2.3.
No, 2.3, very cheap. So, but but honestly, it works. That makes sense for VIZIO. That even their acquisition would be cheap. So, with that being said, Microsoft has confirmed that Xbox games are going to switch in PlayStation. That was news for a couple of days ago. And things like, I know that Diablo 4 will be heading to, I want to say, Xbox Game Pass. You have other games, just looking at the thumbnail here for this article. Sea of Thieves, which is very, very popular. Hi-Fi Rush, very highly acclaimed.
Well, all Microsoft games come to PC anyway, right? So that's not the big deal. You and I have chatted about this briefly. We don't really talk about this a lot. Corey and I do when we do our monthly podcast. Like I hate to say it, but the writing's been on the wall for a very long time. And you want to be objective and say, if you love video games, you love everything. Like, there's no such thing as an unpopular console if you're a gamer. Like, you buy a console that only has 3 games, you love it. That's just how it goes. But Microsoft was a major player. They were a major player for 20 years, but obviously they have not evolved with the times. The Xbox Series, the most successful console they've ever had was the Xbox 360. They struggled with the Xbox One. They are struggling even more so with the Xbox Series X and S. Here's the thing, though, Ben. Razer's blades. That whole concept, right?
Yeah. You're talking about Razer. I'm sorry. I thought you were about to talk about the gaming laptop from Razer. No.
Razor blades.
You're talking about the sell the
leaders.
Razer and then they'll buy the blades. Yes.
Yeah. That's the whole concept. Like, Sony and Microsoft don't make any money on the hardware. They make all the money on the licensed software. The only company that makes money on hardware is Nintendo, because the hardware is not expensive to produce. So they can do that because Nintendo also doesn't have the market capital of Sony or Microsoft. Like, we love Nintendo, but they are very small potatoes in the scheme of things. Sony has movies, they have TVs, they have everything else, computers. Microsoft has servers. Like,
they have that new great movie, Miss Webb or whatever it is. Yeah. Or Madam Web. Yep.
Actually, I didn't send you the story, but did you see the story about Disney's now they offshoot all their Blu-ray and physical media to Sony?
I did hear about that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Disney buys Sony at some point or vice versa. Like, those two companies are starting to merge together a little bit, which is weird. But anyway, long story short, in order for Microsoft to make money off Xbox, they have to sell a threshold, which I think is like 50 to 60 million units, and then they can make software. The problem is they haven't done anywhere close to that. They've done half, and they're not selling any software. So I hate to say it, the days of the Xbox console are numbered. Like at some point, Microsoft will get out of the business. There's just no money. There's no money, and there's no benefit to them.
The other part of this is they obviously just completed their acquisition of Activision Blizzard King.
Yeah.
And
$65 billion.
Yeah, and you know what? A big part of that EU regulators, held them up for almost a year. US regulators held them up. A big part of that was, is this going to create a monopoly? Is this going to create something that other companies will be suffocated by? And Microsoft had to, shake a lot of hands and make a lot of deals and say, no, quite the opposite. This is going to lead to more choice on more platforms.
Well,
and Call of Duty was, kind of the big fish that was offered up. But I think that the agreements that they made to get the acquisition to go through, this is the result, which is more Microsoft games on more consoles.
Well, Microsoft makes the most money on their gaming division with Minecraft, and Minecraft does not make the most money on Microsoft. It makes the most money on Nintendo and Sony platforms and iOS. Like, this is it. Like, Microsoft, I always tell people the guiding template here is not games, it's Office, right? Microsoft makes untold billions putting Office on Android and Mac and iOS, right? That was a big deal. That's a big deal. If Microsoft said you can only use Office on Windows, it wouldn't make any money. Same with anything else. Like, they make their money by putting their services elsewhere. Netflix, if you had to buy a box to play Netflix,
then
Netflix would not
Roku.
be the dominant thing. Yeah, exactly. So what Microsoft is realizing, and this is it, this is an acknowledgement of it, is that they don't have to sell you a box. You can have Xbox on anything. You could have it on your iOS, your Android, your TV, your computer, your Macintosh.
It's
your Chromebook,
not a dumb
whatever.
play. It really isn't.
No, it's brilliant. It's exactly what they need to do. And the problem, though, is that the current management of Microsoft has mismanaged the entire company. Like Sony, like, people didn't talk about this, but Sony themselves has been moving towards this direction where, like, even the PlayStation 5 has been a moderate success and will be more successful. You don't make money if there's no platform. If you spend $300 million making a Spider-Man game, and you only have so many systems, like, let me give you a good example, and I'll be quiet. Nintendo brought out,
and like, I didn't hear it. The great example is literally VR.
I'm not saying it's Aliens, but it's Aliens. No, but Nintendo brought out the Wii U in 2012. And the Wii U had a bunch of really good games. The problem is nobody bought the Wii U. Only sold like 13 million units. It was the worst Nintendo console since the Virtual Boy. But one of the games they brought out was Mario Kart 8. Mario Kart 8 sold very well in the Wii U. It sold like 5-6 million copies. But that's it. It can't go any higher. There's just no more consoles to sell, right? So when the Switch came out, Switch was hugely popular. They just brought that game out on the Switch. They fixed it up a little bit, but it's the same game. You know what? 50 million copies.
Yep.
It's the biggest selling game of the generation. Like, you can't sell software if you don't have platform. And if Microsoft relies, if you have to have an Xbox to play Sea of Thieves or Hi-Fi Rush or whatever, you're not going to make any money. If Call of Duty was only on Xbox, how many people, here's the question, Ben, how many people are going to buy an Xbox to play Call of Duty? And the answer is not many.
Yeah.
Like, now,
might have been the answer back in 2008, but not so much now.
That's like, there's a whole history of this, but how many people are going to buy a Nintendo console to play Zelda? A lot. I think they proved that with Halo, is that no one bought an Xbox to play Halo, That's the thing. At one point they did.
Yeah.
At one point they did. They had a cachet, they had a brand that was white hot. They could insist on exclusive. That's why they bought it from Apple. Like Bungie, they bought Bungie to keep them away from Apple.
Yep.
And to be a flagship. But again, if you have a brand name cachet that's white hot like Zelda and Mario and Pokemon, you can sell your box and people will buy your box. Microsoft does not have that cachet brand. They don't have it. Sony has a little bit of it, but it's not that white hot anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
so speaking of Sony, let's go ahead and transition to our last story, which is Sony plans PC VR compatibility with their headset. Which,
same thing, same story, same exact thing.
I have heard multiple times from multiple people that one of the best VR headsets on the market is the PlayStation VR 2.
Yeah.
It's a good piece of hardware that's always been tied to a PlayStation. In fact, I've even heard some people go as far to say that it is something worth buying a PlayStation 4. Is just just access to the headset, because it would save you a couple $100 on a more expensive PC-based headset. So,
that's the problem though. It's like they're proprietary. Like this is the PSVR 2 is PS5 only. And it costs more than a PlayStation 5. It's like $550. PlayStation's $500. Is it as good as the what is it? What's the third
Google
iteration of the Meta one?
Oh yeah, Facebook Meta, not the Meta Quest, is it?
Is it the Quest? Yeah, Quest, the one that just came out, the $500 one. Is it as good as the $3,500 Apple? Irrelevant. It's a game. It's a gaming thing. It's not meant for that. But again, it's limited by its platform. It's a big investment. You got to spend over $1,200 just to say hi.
Yeah.
And the software is anemic because, again, Ben, who's going to develop for a platform that's only going to have like 3 million users? Like, it's just not going to happen. So same argument I made about Microsoft, same exact argument. Bring it if they open it up to the PC, which they did before, by the way. They did with the the controllers called the DualSense on the PlayStation 5. It's a wonderful controller, but it's now compatible with Steam. It's now compatible with Windows stuff like natively. You could play PlayStation games on it. Works great. Like that's where Sony's going because they simply don't have the leverage, and it's a lot to ask for people to buy a proprietary headset that doesn't work with anything else. Like you can't play Valve games on it. You can't do any of that stuff. It is what it is. It's very limited the way it is right now.
Yep. So with PSVR 2 coming to PC, which I think is just such a great move. Great. Hopefully we see some more adoption. Like VR is not dead yet. It's limping along. It's still trying to find an audience, but
I don't think it's going to die. I think it's here to stay. But I think it's here to stay as a niche. And I think once they recognize that I think I talked to you about this last time with the Vision Pro. I said, I think if I were Meta, I would cancel all these crappy games that nobody wants, and I would focus on Office. And I noticed one of the first things that Zuckerberg did is that he went on this big thing where he didn't even talk about games. He talked about Office capabilities, how they opened up Vision things. Like they actually did some of my suggestions. Like, nobody wants to play mediocre games. Like, give them the Office. Give them Office software. Give them productivity suites. Like, if you tell a PC person they can start editing Photoshop in a $500 VR headset, they're going to do it.
Yep.
They're going to like doing that. But they're not going to play, like, virtual crappy tennis for $500. They want productivity.
What was the little ad here? Pixel Rip Studio announces Paw Ball, a free-to-play VR soccer game with cats. Like, don't get me wrong, could be cute.
Could be.
It's probably not a thing that's going to revolutionize the VR market, but good for them.
Well, that's the thing, though. It's like we started this episode by you talking about Galactic, the Viking. What is it called again? The Viking game, Galactic.
Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. Yes. Okay,
but that's not monopolized. Like everyone's talking about Final Fantasy right now. Ooh,
yes.
New Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy 7 2 remastered.
But that Galactic game is going to make more money than that Final Fantasy game.
Mm-hmm.
That's the stuff that drives it. Like, we may laugh at cats playing soccer or tennis or whatever, but that's the niche stuff that you need on this stuff, because that's the stuff that's going to sell this stuff. It's going to be the weird, wacky stuff you can't get anywhere else.
The weird, wacky stuff you can't get anywhere else. What a great tagline for Popzara. My goodness.
Well, there's a game, one of the games we talked about with Microsoft was called Pension. It's a very low-key 2D adventure game that was released exclusively on Xbox and PC, made by one of the developers who did Fallout. It's lo-fi. You could play the game on like a Game Boy. It's a lo-fi game. It's coming to Switch. That game will make more money on Switch in a week than it ever made in 2 years on Xbox. It's just how it goes. Like, that's a better platform. You want to sit in front of your TV and read all that text, or you want to sit with a Switch in your hands. You're going to do it on the Switch.
I think you could look at Terraria, or you could look at Stardew Valley and see that every time they come out on a more appropriate console, which you start it on like PC, and then Xbox, sit on your couch with a controller, great. Switch, it outperformed all of it. Yeah.
I will have one more comment though. I think, and nowhere in these news stories anybody say it, but I'll predict it, and my prediction's going to come true because it's inevitable. at some point, Microsoft, if they do exit the business, I think what will happen is they will formalize a new form factor for Windows. Like you've already seen it with a couple of these handheld things. Like Windows doesn't run very well on a handheld; it's just not made for it. Like the Steam Deck runs a version.
Are you saying
of Linux.
the micro PC is coming back? I think you're about to say the micro PC.
I think you're like Microsoft actually helped Lenovo make their thing. They actually helped with some of the design. But you're gonna like if you have a Surface and you flip the keyboard down, like your Windows will go bloop bloop bloop. I'm in tablet mode, right?
Mm-hmm.
It needs to go bloop 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 and be in handheld mode, and therefore you can use a version of Windows 11 that's well suited for gaming. Like it's not well suited right now, and when that happens, the Windows handheld will be a new form factor. It will run Windows games. It will run Game Pass. It'll run Blizzard. It'll run Warcraft. It'll be a PC in a handheld form. That's the future that Microsoft is going to go for, because then you could plug that thing up to a monitor and use it as a PC. They already have it. You can buy one right now in the store. Go to Best Buy right now.
With the subtle but still ever present, like, kind of undercurrent of what do you call it? Not server-based, server-based processing, cloud computing. You are probably very, very right, which is, you don't need the hardware to be excellent to get a good experience if you have that data connection.
Well, check this out, though. I actually think it's more than that. Like, we talked about the new Ryzen chips last month with the 8000 series.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about eGPUs and everything. Do me a favor before we go. Just go to Google and type in ROG Ally, right? Like, the problem is that Moore's law has been inverted, and you're going to have systems on chips. You're going to have eGPUs. You're going to have throughput. You're going to have DLSS. You're going to have super sampling. Like, you are going to have such massive processing power on a chip. Like, I actually think that the cloud stuff is going to be not so important. I think this little thing is going to render things better than you think, and it's going to do it at a power consumption level so low. It's like, you could play Resident Evil 4 on an iPhone right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's going to blow that away. And I think the first test of it is going to be the new NVIDIA chips you see in the new Nintendo console. Like Nintendo is the only one out there that is like investing in cheap technology. They're not going for bleeding edge. Like, the new Nintendo is not going to be $500. It's not going to be. It's going to be cheap. It's going to be like $300. How can you make a $300 piece of hardware sing? And I think that's the investment we're going to see. We're going to see power consumption hit an all new low. We're going to see graphics look much better. And I think it's going to be irrelevant. It's going to change. And I think Windows is going to adopt that. It's just the way it goes. That's the future. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it really does not just democratize, but makes it all more accessible. And that's something that everyone should be totally behind. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But speaking of making things more accessible, the movies of 2023, you tried to make that more accessible with a nice, short, accessible 2.5 hour conversation with your team over there, because we've talked about some of the other ones you had, like Christmas movies, Halloween movies. You have different topics for different the best monster movies, stuff like that. This time you decided to tackle the best, worst, and everything else movies of 2023. So how'd that go? Just tease it. How'd it go?
Well, normally when we do the Movie Time podcast, my co-host Ethan Brehm and I talk about one or two movies. Every year we wrap it up. We do a big smorgasbord, and I invite all the editors. This year we actually had it was Ethan and I, but we actually had two new editors to the fun. We had Susanna and Will, who are brand new. They've never done a podcast before. Nice. This is the first podcast they've ever done, and they did great. And we ramble a lot. We go off topic. We meander. We lose the thread sometimes, but that's the best part of a podcast. It's all the messiness, because it's not strictly, it's not just a strict like top 10 thing. We had a lot of fun, and I'll be honest with you, I fell into a deep fever after, so I don't remember half of it. So if I listen to it, it'll be brand new to me, and Perfect. I was in it. So.
Well, yeah, and just looking at your sneak peek here, I think you covered all the movies ever. So. Yeah.
Can I tell you? Can I give you a little hint? I'm not going to spoil anything about them, but I can give you a little taste.
Go for it.
I can tell you what two of my favorite movies of 2023 were. But if you want to hear why,
obviously it was Barbie and Oppenheimer. Obviously, I mean.
Well, I mean, of course, I mean, without saying no, but I'm not going to speak for Susanna or Will or Ethan, but I will speak for myself. And two of my favorite movies, one of them should be no surprise if you know me. One of them was Blackberry, which came out early last year, but it's actually, again, I'm ashamed that movie didn't get any awards recognition. And two is Godzilla.
Godzilla minus one?
Yeah. First Godzilla movie nominated for an Oscar. So if that means anything, but no, it's a lot of fun. Some of the editors skewed more towards traditional Oscar bait. Some of them did more genre. Some a little bit of both. It's a good mix. I think you'll find a lot of stuff. And if you're looking for stuff to watch this year that you missed, listen to it. There's a lot of good recommendations.
Absolutely. So there you go. And of course, you can find that and more over at Popzara. We'll have a link in the show notes. And Nathan, I want to thank you for coming on the show, tackling the big issues, because these are honestly, these are conversations that I think don't happen as organically as I do with other guests on the show, or just other times I have the show. And I really do appreciate you coming on and talking with us as candidly as you do. It's and ladies and gentlemen, it may sometimes come across as like combative, or which honestly very
combative.
Civil, very civil conversation. But disagreements don't mean that we're not against that we're against each other. It's just a conversation.
Well, can I say something?
Go for it.
If you don't have disagreement, it's not a conversation. Like you need to have something to spice it up. You need to, and you could do it respectfully. And I would caution anybody, don't be afraid of expressing your opinion. Just do it respectfully and understand that your opinion is yours and someone else may have a different one. And the fun part is engaging, because honestly, there's nothing more. If I died right now and went to hell, which could happen, my idea of hell is just having everyone agree with me all the time. I would say, oh my God, I'm in hell. And then with you, I'm never in hell. There you go.
Thank you. That is the weirdest compliment I've gotten all day. But the day is young, everyone. I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope that you had fun listening. Again, if you want to reach out to the show, Ben at computeramerica.com, and hey, suggest topics or other areas of conversation. But in the meantime, I hope you have a great weekend. Dune 2 is coming out soon. I've been telling everyone that I can, because they only delayed it by like 2 years. So hopefully it lives up to the hype. By the next time that you hear from Nathan on the program, it will have come out, and hopefully we all had a good time. So Nathan, have a great weekend. Get better, get well soon.
Thank you.
And everyone else out there, thank you for tuning in. Catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.